Oh wow, it is a brand new season of Formula One, and how magnificent is this new studio. I'm coming to you live from the beautiful Suzuki showroom at the Menlyn Park Shopping Centre just outside of Pretoria. Very good evening, my name is Sasha Martinengo, and don't tell anybody, but we just borrowed this for this evening. Everything's under park for May. They won't miss it. I promise you they won't. So it is going to be an incredible season. It's huge thanks to Suzuki, our sponsors of the LGR F1 Show, and also my good friends at the Penta Motor Group. I want your engagement, so I want you to get in touch with me via my WhatsApp line. We're going to put it up on the screen for you. I'm going to leave it there for quite a few seconds so you can get it down. You want to send any messages, any comments through, or you want to join the LGR F1 Show WhatsApp group, just let me know, and of course I will add it onto the group for you. It is the 74th year of Formula One. This year, the most races we've ever had in the history of Formula One in one calendar year, and that of course is 23 races. The team principals of course have got the knives out. They still have a go at each other. It is going to be an incredibly interesting 2023. Let's go racing. And welcome back. Now, before we get into the 2023 season, there are a couple of things I need to clarify. Number one, have you watched Drive to Survive Season 5? Well, I'm not a huge fan of Drive to Survive, and I think Toto Wolff summed it up best, actually, in the first opening minutes of Drive to Survive Season 5, where he said, it's more Top Gun than it is a documentary. However, one has to understand that Liberty, since they've taken over the world of Formula One, have done an incredible job in growing the audience all over the world, specifically in the United States. And, well, the United States consumes programs like Drive to Survive for breakfast, and they love to know what is going on. And one can only respect that the new people who have coming into Formula One over the last couple of years only know what they know. And me as an old school purist, you know, sometimes you think, you're going to get offended by what people might think. They might not know who Ayrton Senna is. They might not know who Michael Schumacher is. They might not know who Nigel Mansell is. But that's actually okay. So, you know, I'm actually cool with it. It's not a show that I actually watch. I did watch the first 20 minutes of season 1, and then I realized, you know what, it's not my kind of show, but give it a go if you're new to the world of Formula One. There's some great insights, I'm sure, across the whole program. The one thing that Drive to Survive has brought us is a much younger audience. And let's see if somebody can actually be as bright as this young girl.
Max,
Verstappen,
Charles,
Leclerc,
Sergio,
Perez,
George,
Russell,
Carlos,
Sainz,
Lewis,
Hamilton,
Lando,
Norris,
Esteban,
Malcolm,
Fernando,
Alonso,
Valtteri,
Bottas,
Daniel,
Ricciardo,
Sebastian,
Vettel,
Kevin,
Magnussen,
Pierre,
Gasly,
Lance,
Stroll,
Mick,
Schumacher,
Yuki,
Tsunoda,
Joe,
Guanyu,
Alex, Alexander,
Albon,
Nicholas,
Latifi,
and the best ever, Ayrton.
Senna.
Good girl.
I mean, come on, that is really, really cute. Hey, you got to admit that. Lots of people coming through on Facebook with comments as well, and quite a few coming through on the WhatsApp line as well. During the course of the show, of course, I will keep you updated with the WhatsApp line. We have 23 races this year in Formula One. Originally, we were going to have 24 races, but China, because of COVID, is not on the calendar, and that now means that we go down to 23. China has not been replaced. We do lose the French Grand Prix this year, but we have a return this year of Las Vegas. Just waiting to see if we get that calendar up on our screen for us. And can you believe the last Las Vegas Grand Prix? Can you remember? Maybe a little bit time ago. Those days when they raced in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is coming up on the 18th of November. When they raced in Las Vegas, they actually raced in a parking lot behind all of the hotels. It really wasn't a great spectacle. We saw what they did last year when they went to go and launch for Las Vegas. It is going to be an incredible event around the streets of Las Vegas, right down the main strip. And if you've ever been to Las Vegas, quite extraordinary. But the last Grand Prix in Las Vegas was actually back in 1982 and won by Michele Alboreto. Also this year, and I'm not a big fan of Drive to Survive, and I'm equally not a massive fan of our sprint races. But Formula One has decided, no, we are going to have more sprint races in 2023, and they're going to have 6 of them. There we go. Azerbaijan, we're going to have the Austrian Grand Prix, Belgian Grand Prix, Qatar, United States, and then, of course, Brazil right at the end. So, yeah, whether or not you're a fan of the Grand Prix sprint races, I'm still not sold on them, in the sense that I think we could actually be doing a little bit more with them. I don't know if it really gets me too excited. Well, okay. The one thing is, there is a God. No, and I'm not talking about Adrian Newey. Barcelona, the Circuit de Catalunya, which has been used for years and years and years for testing, and is also one of the mainstay Grand Prix on the Formula One calendar, are eventually changing the last corner. Thank goodness. Okay, as you can see on the graphic on your right-hand side, we had the little chicane, but now, going forward, that chicane is actually going to be taken out. So we're going to have a very fast sweep that goes through turn 13 and, of course, into 14. And I think that's going to lead to some amazing overtaking going down into turn 1. It is something that we've been begging for years and years and years. And eventually, people at the Circuit de Catalunya have heeded to our call. All right, coming up shortly, we'll look at the world of news. While you were maybe having a little bit of a holiday and sitting on the beach, of course, the world of Formula One does not stop. And people like me just absorb and try and consume as much of the news as possible. So what I've done is just gone through some of the headlines of the things that have happened in the off-season over the last 3.5 months. So there we go. Just a couple of things that have happened in the off season, and it's just been a crazy, crazy off season, as you can see, with a lot of team personnel changes. We'll get to that in a short while. Just go through some of the comments. Thanks very much. It's always great to hear from you. Colin says, I hated that corner. Angelo says, how's it, Sasha? Sprint races are stupid. Ian says, hey, good to hear your voice again. Lovely. Thank you very much. And Rika says, yeah, let's discuss the off-season chaos and what's up with the rule changes. Okay, we'll go through some of those as well. She also goes on, yeah, we need to do something about the sprint races. So, yeah, I think, there's a lot of feeling that these sprint races aren't really what I think they were anticipated, that we anticipated them to see. WhatsApp line is on your screen as well. Please use that. Get in touch. We had a couple of messages that have come through as well saying, cool intro. Wonderful to have you back, Tony. Nice to hear from you as well. One of the biggest talking points in the off-season that only happened a couple of weeks ago is the FIA president, Mohammed bin Suleiman, who has decided to step back from his day-to-day runnings of Formula One. And basically he's handing that over to Nicholas Tombazis. Now this all came about after quite a few of the team principals weren't too happy the way that Suleiman was actually trying to clamp down on the freedom of speech of many of the drivers. Nicholas Tombazis has been with many, many teams in Formula One. He's been with the FIA for many, many years. So I think he'll do a great job as well. Here in South Africa, of course, we rely on getting our coverage from Sky and the Sky team. And I always have a go at some of them. And I'm not entirely sure how this works, but Sky have decided that they are ditching Johnny Herbert and Paul de Resta. And I go and think, I could think of a few others that I would have chosen to get rid of before them. But having been in a situation like this before myself, it's amazing how they always get rid of the really talented and clever ones. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Okay, anyway, enough about that. I'm sure the coverage is going to be spectacular during this season as well. Last week was a magnificent weekend in South Africa for motorsport. We had the Kyalami 9-hour in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, but in Cape Town, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because I am South African, the setting, the scenery of the Cape Town Formula E Prix was breathtaking. It was breathtaking. I don't think there is a spot in the world that can match up to the beauty of Cape Town. And congratulations to the city of Cape Town, to Formula E, for putting on an outstanding event. Now, you saw in that strapline that it says, this might bode well for Formula One. Of course, when the rest of the world sees what South Africa can do in putting on an international event like Formula E, it's got to open up doors for Formula One. I think a lot of people will read into the headline that perhaps maybe Formula One could go to Cape Town and do a street circuit in Cape Town similar to Formula E. The track or the streets are too narrow, and it would cost billions and billions of rands to go and reconstruct that. But maybe it bodes well for Formula One returning to the likes of Kyalami, and let's hope maybe as soon as 2024. Coming up in a short while, I'm going to look at what happened at testing in Bahrain last week. If you're just tuning in, coming to you live from our magnificent Suzuki showroom in the Menlyn Park Shopping Centre. And of course, they are the sponsors of the LGR F1 Show. I'll be back after this. All right, set looks awesome. Thank you very, very much. Do you like my our little Ferrari car over here? I mean, that's quite spectacular. And of course, got quite a few helmets behind me as well. But you're not allowed to take them home with you. I promise you not. Pre-season testing. Many, many years ago in the world of Formula One, pre-season testing, we used to have testing in Valencia, we had testing in Barcelona, and it was 3 days at a time and 6 days at a time. And from there, we gathered a tremendous amount of data, and from there, gave us some kind of a pecking order. This year, we've had 3 days. Last week, Friday, Saturday and Sunday in Bahrain, and that's it. Now, how do you get a pecking order out of that? The wonderful thing about technology is you have these data crunching crazy people all over the world that take a lap time from every single car at every single lap. They punch it into some computer and that spills out a whole lot of things. There are issues though. We do not know certain things. Number one, how new the tires are. Most importantly, how much fuel is in the car. We can get an idea when we see a car going out for 40 laps without stopping. But then we have to decide, okay, well, when they stopped, did they have fuel in the car? Did they not have fuel in the car? It is incredibly difficult to determine and understand what actually happens in testing nowadays. Two other things that we have to remember from testing. Number one, it is testing. Number two, all of the running in Bahrain last weekend took during daytime temperature hours. This weekend, they will have free practice in the afternoon, but in the evening, they will have second free practice, which of course runs into the evening, and the race itself on Sunday runs into the evening as well. So temperatures are going to be very different. I've managed to find a couple of graphics from testing, and I'll go through them. They are pretty self-explanatory, but let's just have a look at some of the elements of testing from last week. Laps completed, the most laps were Fernando Alonso, the lowest was Felipe Drogovic, and you might be going, who's Felipe Drogovic and why is he there? Felipe Drogovic is the third driver for the Aston Martin team together with Stoffel van Doorn, but Stoffel van Doorn was racing at Formula E. So Felipe Drogovic stood in there because Lance Stroll had a bicycle injury. More on him a little bit later. That is a countdown of all of the laps. You can see McLaren didn't do a tremendous amount of laps, and we'll talk about that when we get to the teams. Second graphic that I've got for you here is the fastest laps. Pre-season testing, do they really mean anything? Red Bull were the quickest, Alpine were the slowest, and those times are roughly about 2 seconds off what we can expect to see, 2.5 seconds maybe, what we can expect to see this coming weekend. Our final graphic, looking at testing as well, most time gained by each of the teams from 2022 testing to 2023 testing. You'll notice at the bottom, you've got Alpine that actually didn't improve on their time, and right at the top, you've got Williams, who has improved by nearly 2.5 seconds. Of course, we have got to remember that you are going to improve from last year to this year. Last year was the beginning of a brand new era in Formula One in terms of the technical changes. So this year is more of an evolution. They would have learnt a lot, specifically most of the teams last year with the problem of porpoising and the car bouncing so violently along the track. So they would have ironed those things out. They would have realized a little bit about airflow. There are a few rule changes, but they're very, very minor. So there is an evolution. You've got to question how come Alpine didn't manage to improve. But I'll tell you about that when we go through each of the teams. Looking at that, fastest of all, Red Bull. So can we say that Red Bull is the fastest and Alpine is the slowest, and that's the pecking order? No, we cannot do that. So, coming up next, I will go through each of the teams in the order of how they actually improved from last year going into this year, and I'll give you perhaps an understanding of why their times were slow and why their times were fast. We'll start off with Alpine after this. Okay, welcome back. Just before I go through all of the teams, Rika says the E-race was epic. Colin says, say after me, Karen Chanduk. Wow, okay. Really? I think it's hysterical. Wenzel, nice to hear from you. Andre says everything looks really, really cool. Thank you very much. Stain says studio looks great. Where's Gary? Gary on assignment, but of course he'll join us during the course of the season. Rika says something about Lance Stroll, and I'll bring that up a little bit later when we get to Aston Martin. But I think you bring up a very, very good point, Rika, as well, and I go with you. Let's start off with the teams in the order that they went from worst to best in terms of improvement from 2022 to 2023. First team is the Alpine team, and of course our two drivers there, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly, of course, has jumped ship. He's come from AlphaTauri. He goes into the team to join Esteban Ocon, which I think is fantastic. Let's be very clear. These two drivers do not like each other too much. Okay. They really don't like each other. But they are both incredibly fast. They are both Grand Prix winners. We mustn't forget that both of them are Grand Prix winners. You've got to feel for Alpine because they finished fourth in the championship last year. They were looking really, really good. All of a sudden, Sebastian Vettel says, I'm leaving Formula One. You go, okay, cool. That leaves a spot open at Aston Martin. Next minute, Alonso says, bang. I'm going through to Aston Martin. Alonso goes to Aston Martin. Alpine now sit there and go, hold on, we have got this brilliant third driver called Oscar Piastri. They had him on contract. They've spent about $5 million on his development through the years. They go and put a press release saying, fantastic, Esteban Ocon's going to be joined by Oscar Piastri. Piastri comes out and goes, hold on a second, I'm actually going to McLaren. So I tell you, Alpine had a really shambles towards the end of last season. It nearly went to some kind of litigation, but they opted to go with Pierre Gasly. It's going to be an incredible team. They are definitely not the bottom of the pile. If anything, I think they are right up there with Mercedes-Benz and Aston Martin. So that's why I do not believe too much in what we saw in testing. Our next team is a team that had a pretty decent 2022 with limited resources, but this year they've got a lot more money, they've got a brand new sponsor on board, and they've decided to also change their driver lineup. They retain the services of Kevin Magnussen, who of course in 2022 jumped in at last minute to take over the place of Nikita Mazepin. And Nico Hülkenberg, the super sub, returns after a 3-year hiatus of Formula One, but of course he has driven for a few teams, and he's still incredibly highly rated. That is the Haas team. They have dropped Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher has gone to join Mercedes-Benz as a third driver, and I do have a very soft spot for Mick Schumacher, and I really do hope that Toto Wolff and Mercedes manage to find him somewhere to return in 2024. I really do believe he deserves a shot on the grid. They've got two very experienced drivers in Hülkenberg and Magnussen. The car looks pretty decent and most probably sitting in about 6th place in the pecking order, in my opinion. And I really think if they can qualify well, and that is a little bit of an Achilles heel for Hülkenberg over the latter part of his career. In the beginning of his career, he was super fast in one lap. But if they can get their qualifying right, those two experienced racing drivers, I think, will be able to get quite a few points. They also have the Ferrari power in the back of that car, which seems to be a lot more reliable than last year. So Haas definitely have to step up. Our problem child of 2023 has to be, unfortunately, McLaren. McLaren have come out even before testing started and said we have a problem with our MCL 60. This is the 60th year of McLaren. It's not the way that they want to start the season, unfortunately. But they say they have fallen short when it comes to their aerodynamic objectives from the wind tunnel. They struggled with the amount of laps that they did around Bahrain in testing, and I fear that the first few races are going to be very difficult for two spectacular drivers. Those drivers, of course, Lando Norris who is going to be with his 5th season for the McLaren outfit. And he is joined by the incredibly impressive, very outspoken, and, well, you know, this could be the next gem, but Oscar Piastri is in a car that unfortunately is going to fail to deliver initially. All right. Then, next up, we have, oh, there we go. That is the beautiful MCL 60. It does look magnificent. Unfortunately, it just isn't as fast as it looks. So let's hope McLaren can sort out those problems, because, you know, the whole Oscar Piastri, Zach Brown, Otmar Znafauer, last year Alpine, just sits ugly with everybody, and we just want to see some great racing. So I really hope that McLaren can sort that out. Next team, they're the third year that the two drivers will be together, and that, of course, is Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Okay, well, we could say Leclerc, but his name is definitely Charles, not Charles. Okay, so his name is Charles Leclerc. They had a brilliant start to 2022. And then, unfortunately, things went bad. They had reliability issues. They had strategy issues. These two drivers are incredibly competitive. They're incredibly fast. And I wouldn't want to pick a number one between them. Ted Kravitz actually asked Fred Vasseur, the new dealer principal or team principal at Ferrari, he said, how are you going to take on the likes of Max Verstappen if you don't have a number one driver? And Vasseur very eloquently and very cleverly replied, he said, I've got two good ones. Let's hope and see. The Ferrari car looks magnificent. It is the SF23. That is the name of the car. Oh, but hold on. Okay, we've got it there on the screen. That's Carlos Sainz's car. The one thing I love about this year's Ferrari is on the back wing, we have the name Ferrari yet again, which I think is stunning. We haven't had that for many, many years. The problem that Ferrari had towards the end of last season, besides strategy, and I'll get to that in a second, is we had an issue where the car was very poor on the tires. The tire degradation was really, really bad. And we noticed that again in Bahrain test last week. Now, Ferrari have come out and said, well, they're not really that concerned about it because the race is going to be in the evening. It's going to be a lot colder. Well, Mr. Vasseur, here's a little bit of advice for you. I hate to tell you, but a lot of the races this year actually happen during the day. And those temperatures are going to be hotter. So if your car's not performing now, how's it going to perform a little bit later? But that's just my observation. The one thing that all the Tifosi around the world were so frustrated about last year was the strategy. And the strategy let the team down at multiple races. I can inform you that there is a new strategy chief at Ferrari, and that is Ravin Jain. He's the head of strategies. He's a young guy. He's only 26 years old. Laurent Mekis stays on his team management. Frederic Vasseur, media sponsor driver management. And Inaki Rueda will work in Maranello. And I think there's a lot of relief for everybody else. But if you want to have a person with big shoulders, I really hope that Ravin Jain has got big shoulders. All right, coming up, we will look at the 5 other teams who are going to contest the Formula One season. Man, I'm just watching that Suzuki ad, and I'm like, well, where's my Suzuki Swift Sport? Hey? Come on, let's make an ad for that. There we go, coming to you live from our Suzuki showroom in Menlyn Park Shopping Centre. And maybe you hear some ambient noise because lots of people outside, restaurants are busy. It's just wonderful to be here in our brand new home of the LGR F1 Show. 5 other teams, of course, will compete. We've looked at Ferrari, we've looked at McLaren, we've looked at Haas, we've looked at Alpine. Anybody else? Yeah, there we go. Let's look at Red Bull Racing. Checo and Max. What can you say? An unbelievable combination. Max Verstappen, and you've heard me say this before during the past couple of years, is one of the greatest racing drivers I've ever seen in Formula One. And I've been watching Formula One for over 40 odd years. He really is something incredibly special. Checo Perez is one of those drivers who just doesn't give up. He started his life at McLaren, he got demoted, he went to Force India, he bailed him out of there, he made his way back, and now he's in Red Bull, and he's proving to be an unbelievable co-driver or second driver, and I mean it with the greatest respect to Max Verstappen. Of course, he wants to try and go out there and win a championship. The one wonderful thing for Checo Perez this year is that in testing, what we did notice with the Red Bull, Max Verstappen prefers a car that is very pointy at the front, that turns in immediately, whereas Checo Perez prefers a car that's a little bit more docile and he has to really just hustle it a little bit. They seem to have found a car that is suitable for both their drivers. So well done to Red Bull. They, of course, were fined last year for overspending on the budget cap, and they have been reduced in their wind tunnel testing. It doesn't seem to have made any difference whatsoever. There is the Red Bull car. It was incredibly dominant in pre-season testing. Both of the drivers were astonished at how good the car was. And it is said that the power unit, of course, which actually is a Honda power unit in that Red Bull car, is that Honda seem to have the best MGUK unit, and that is the kinetic energy which gets stored from using the brakes, which goes and then eventually feeds back into the engine, into the turbo as well. They seem to have the best solution from all of the teams. The car was incredibly fast. Definitely the team to beat. Next team, I love AlphaTauri. I've loved them since they were Scuderia, Toro Rosso. They have their DNA originally from the Minardi team, and they definitely have the shortest pairing in terms of height of drivers. Yuki Tsunoda retains his seat, super fast, and wonderful to see Nick de Vries making his full Formula One debut. Yuki Tsunoda, I'm going to speak about in a moment, but Nick de Vries is a guy who just raced in Europe, did so many different kinds of series, won so many different championships, got left out in the cold after his Formula 2 career, managed to get into Formula E, won the Formula E championship, got called in at the last minute to stand in for Alex Albon in Monza last year, had an incredible race, scored points, and the next minute he gets himself a drive. He deserves to be in Formula One, and I'm so glad to see him there this year. The one thing that you got to know about Nick de Vries, he is a fighter, and he will give no chances to Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda is super fast, but the one thing he had in AlphaTauri was an ally in Pierre Gasly. They actually were very, very good friends. And Yuki Tsunoda needs that kind of, for the want of a better word, love from his teammate. He's not going to get that from Nick de Vries. I tell you, Franz Tost is going to have to manage Yuki Tsunoda very well, because I really think he might have issues with Nick de Vries. The AlphaTauri looks spectacular. Of course, it's a baby Red Bull. There's been talk that the AlphaTauri is going to be sold. It's not going to be sold, because of Dietrich Mateschitz passing away at the end of last year. You'll notice on the car as well, Orlen is the Polish company who used to sponsor Alfa Romeo, and of course we're a huge sponsor of Robert Kubica. They've moved over to AlphaTauri, but they haven't taken Robert Kubica with them. Okay, the team that so many people need and want to bounce back in 2023 is undoubtedly Mercedes. 7 times world champion, Sir Lewis Hamilton, second year for George Russell. George Russell must be sitting and thinking, I can't believe that Lewis Hamilton had such a dominant car for 8 years, and then I get into the car and it's just a bucket of bolts. They fought hard. The team did an incredible job from turning what the start of 2022 to eventually winning in Brazil with George Russell is an incredible mountain that they climbed. This year's car looks a lot better. In terms of it on the track, it wasn't bouncing nearly as much. You can see the black paint livery has returned for the Mercedes-Benz car. But out of the 3 days testing, day 2, they all of a sudden lost all kinds of initial inertia that they had on day 1, but then on day 3 they managed to come it back. I think they are hiding a lot, and I really think this weekend we're going to see. The question is, do they have the reliability that plagued them on day 2? Probably at the moment just a little bit off the pace of Ferrari, but I think very, very close to Ferrari and perhaps maybe Aston Martin. But a great combination as well, and we'll see if that power unit is going to be as quick. Next team, all of a sudden we see them incredibly high up on the charts in terms of how they did in pre-season testing and how they improved from last year to this year, is Alfa Romeo. The Alfa Romeo team retained their 2 drivers, Valtteri Bottas sporting a very Australian little mullet towards the back of his hair, and of course you got Wang Yuzhou, who is, I think, just a wonderful talent all the way from China. Also a team that has had personnel changes. Frederick Vasseur, who was the team principal, moved to Ferrari. Andreas Seidel from McLaren has come into the Sauber Alfa Romeo organization, but he's handing the day-to-day responsibilities to Alessandro Bravi, who is a representative from Alfa Romeo. This is the last year that Alfa Romeo are going to be in Formula One with Sauber. Whether they continue in the future, we don't know, but it's their last year that they're going to be with the Sauber organization. So the one thing that does concern me is how much development is actually going to go on. Andreas Seidel's position as team principal or CEO of the Alfa Romeo Sauber organization is there specifically to get the team set up for when Audi comes in 2026. So that's Alfa Romeo at the moment, I think, running about 6th in the pecking order. The wonderful surprise of 2023 when it came to pre-season testing, and I say that cautiously because we don't really know, was Aston Martin. The car looks amazing. Fernando Alonso has jumped ship. He's gone to Aston Martin and he teams up with Lance Stroll. Fernando Alonso was unbelievable at Renault. Then he made a couple of crazy choices. He went to McLaren and that didn't work out well. He went to Ferrari and they had a chance and he most probably should have won that championship. He lost out in Abu Dhabi. From there, then he changed and he went here and he went there. Then he went and raced the Dakar and then he went and raced Le Mans and won that. He is one of the unbelievable talents in motor racing that we are blessed to watch every weekend. I'm hoping, Fernando, you've made a right call now because you don't really have time on your side. He was unbelievably quick during pre-season testing, was very happy with the car, and he's a man that, you know, if you give Fernando just a sniff, he will definitely make the most of it. So did they flatter themselves during testing? We'll only know at free practice tomorrow. The great news, and that only came out just a couple of hours ago. We saw earlier Felipe Drogovic was the driver that did all of the pre-season testing, but news has just come out that Lance Stroll will take part in the Grand Prix in Bahrain tomorrow. He's had wrist surgery and apparently still got screws in his wrist. And I just hope, as Rika said, just be careful in terms of injuries, especially to the wrist. I just really hope that Lance Stroll is going to be okay. If you look at wrist injuries in the past of various drivers in Formula One, I think back to Alessandro Nannini, who got injured in a helicopter accident, never ever raced in Formula One competitively again. Same with Robert Kubica, although they were very, very severe accidents. Lance Stroll was off a cycling accident, but as we know, accidents are accidents. So I really hope that Lance is 100% fit and this doesn't plague him for this season. Our final team to look at for 2023 is the Williams team. Also got some new personnel in terms of drivers and in management. There is Alexander Albon, who we all know is a wonderful racing driver and perhaps deserves a little bit better than Williams, but he's there and I'm sure he will do his best. Great new talent that comes in to join him is a guy by the name of Logan Sargent, American racing driver, did a brilliant job in Formula 2 and Formula 3, so a really, really super talent. The million-dollar question is, can Williams supply them with a decent car? Jost Capito has left the team. The very and highly respected James Vowles, who was the strategy man from Mercedes, comes into Williams. Is it a little bit, I don't know, too late for Williams? It's the FW45. It's 45 years of Frank Williams' name on a car. The car is pretty. It was incredibly good or decent in testing. But I hate to tell you, I think they are still bottom of the pile. And if there is no improvement within this team, I've got to look at their owners to sit there and say, you know what, rather pass this on to somebody who can give Williams the name what it deserves. So, you know, I love Williams. I've always been very, very special and close to my heart. I'm just very concerned about their future. Those are all of the teams. And finally, what does this all mean in terms of testing? How does everything rate out with all of the data that was collected? Well, the very, very experienced German publication, Amos, have come out with this verdict where they say adjusting factors such as fuel levels, engine modes, asphalt temperature, the RB19 is estimated to be 2 to 4 tenths quicker than the Ferrari and 6 tenths faster than the Mercedes. In the long run, the gap is said to be even bigger. Wow. That scares me if that is correct. But we will find out tomorrow at, well, when first free practice starts in Bahrain. Speaking of which, I'll give you all of the details of Bahrain F1 2023 after this. All right, let's have a look. Lots of comments coming through, and I mean, I can't go through all of them, but I will go through them and answer as many of the questions as I can during the course of the next few days. Roland says, too early for Merck to bounce back. Alonso, a living legend from Rakesh. Yeah, he is, and wonderful. To be honest, my 2-year-old could have been a better strategist than Ferrari. Would like to see Ferrari nail both championships this year. I think there are a lot of tifosi around the world that would like to see that as well. There's an interesting one about Williams. Rumor, Susie Wolff or Jensen Button for Williams team principal. Well, Susie Wolff has just been announced as the Formula One Driver Academy Managing Director. So she's definitely not going to Williams. Does it mean Button as Williams team principal? I think, Wenzel, the problem is I don't know if the owners of Williams are that invested in the sport or just trying to sit there and say, you know, Formula One is on the rise, prices are crazy, and maybe just make a profit on selling the team. If they don't inject into that team, and don't forget, we're all on budget caps, so they've got to find that enough that $146.5 million and go and spend it properly. And let's see that car out there. So that's my concern with Williams. This weekend, it is, of course, the Bahrain Grand Prix. Here is something crazy. When do you think the first Bahrain Grand Prix was? I'll give you a few seconds. 19 years ago. Yeah, it feels like yesterday. 19 years ago was the first Bahrain Grand Prix. There it is, 2004. The circuit length 5.4 kilometers. We'll have 57 laps, and the lap record is still held by Pedro de la Rosa all the way back in 2005. It's a wonderful track. There are great opportunities for overtaking on the circuit, and of course we also have quite a few DRS zones, which I'm sure will be, there we've got the 3 DRS zones. It's a wonderful circuit, and of course the cars run under the lights as well. So it's a wonderful spectacle. I expect it to be a full house there this weekend as well. One of the most important things on the cars, of course, are the tires. So Pirelli are going to be bringing the following to this weekend's Grand Prix: the C1, the C2 and the C3 compounds, which means it's the hardest of each of the 3 compounds. So it's the hardest hard tire, the hardest medium tire and the hardest soft tire. They would have tested all of these tires last weekend as well. However, when they do second free practice, qualifying in the race, the temperatures will be significantly different to what they had in testing. And of course, we don't know how much the teams were sandbagging when it comes to the testing last weekend. So that's what we can expect from the Pirelli tires. And now the big thing is, when can we watch our first Grand Prix after a break of 89 days? Our first free practice starts at 1:30 tomorrow afternoon up until 2:30. Second free practice from 5 through until 6. On Saturday, 1:30 to 2:30, and of course 5 through until 6, and the race at 5 o'clock. All of these times are South African time. So if you're watching from elsewhere in the world, please just go to f1.com, click on the schedules, and it'll automatically pick up where you are in the world, and it'll tell you what time you can watch the Grand Prix. So before we go, let's just go through oh, Lila. Oh, it's so nice. Lila Illing, my good friend, watching all the way from the United States. There we go. Nice to see you. Nice to hear from you, Lila, as well. Lots of comments that have come through during the course of the show, and as mentioned, we've got the WhatsApp line there as well. If you want to join my Formula One WhatsApp group, then just send me a message on that WhatsApp number, and of course, I will add you to the group and keep you updated with some of the funny shenanigans that go on that group as well, but a lot of the Formula One stuff as well. Okay, that's it. Thank you for all of the comments. I will reply as soon as I can. It's just wonderful to be in our brand new studio at our brand new home right here at the Suzuki showroom in Menlyn Park Shopping Centre. Thanks very much for joining me this evening. Enjoy the Formula One Grand Prix, and this is going to be your home every Thursday night before a Grand Prix, so make a date for that as well. To my wonderful team, Henk, Fritz, Matt for making these magnificent graphics, Kaylin and Villy at the Penta Motor Group, and of course Suzuki for being our main sponsor. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for watching. Let's go racing.